Have you ever felt lost, confused, or indecisive, and then suddenly a feather just appeared in your path, and instantly you just knew the answer to all of your questions? Or maybe friends and family keep buying you animal themed things, and you're wondering, why do I have like 10 pairs of frog knickers or owl cushions? And you want to understand, why is this animal turned up in my life? Or perhaps an animal has appeared to you in a dream and you're wondering, what does this symbolize? What does this mean? How can this help me with my current challenge or obstacle? This is why I have created the YouTube series Animal with myself and guests that's going to offer you insight into what is the magic, the myth, the medicine of the animal kingdom. What does it mean to have a spirit guide that is a particular animal, and how can they support you in your life's journey, in your healing, and in your connection to self? So whether you are seeking an animal guide, or you want to understand yours better, or maybe even yourself better, or perhaps you're just curious about the symbology, the mythology, the wisdom, medicine, and magic of animals, then this is the perfect series of interviews for you. An easy and accessible way to understand the relevance of animal spirit guides to you, along with practical tips and tools for integrating the wisdom of animals into your everyday life and into your spiritual practice. Now let us fly, gallop, and dive into this episode and the support and inspiration that will empower you. Hey, so welcome to this episode of Animal, and I'm super excited to have Frances Billinghurst with me today, who is a fountain of wisdom. So she is an author, initiated witch and priestess, magical practitioner, what's one of them? I just made up a word. End of life doula and metaphysician. Oh, I can't talk tonight, honestly. Who has been fascinated with mythology, folklore, and esoteric sciences for over half of her lifetime. As a prolific writer, Frances is the author of Dancing the Sacred Wheel, Encountering the Dark Goddess, which I love, by the way, Contemporary Witchcraft, Foundational Practices for Magical Life, and On Her Silver Rays, A Guide to the Moon Myth Magic, among other titles. So definitely check them out. I'll pop the links down below about her, but let's first get into the animal that she's going to be sharing with us today. So this episode has a slightly kind of different twist, as we're going to be going into kind of like a god that is connected to animals, but also an animal himself. Okay, so this is Khepri. But I'm going to let Frances explain who Khepri is first before we start going into the magic that he represents and brings forth. So who is Khepri and why is he here in an animal magic and myth series?
Thank you, Rachel. Yes, so he is from the Egyptian pantheon, and he is actually the scarab beetle, but he's one of and scarab beetles are one of the dung beetles, of which I think there's over 30, there's all over 300. There's lots of different dung beetles out there, but he's of a specific area which includes Egypt and that part of Asia that connects in with the sort of Middle East as well. So a very specific aspect of the dung beetle. And being a scarab beetle as well, he's also depicted with a man with the whole scarab as his head as well in Egypt sort of iconology. And I feel, because he represents these sort of two worlds, sort of our insect world, which we often, when it comes to animals, tend to forget. And also, he's also a god, or as the ancient Egyptians called them, a netters. So we can sort of look at him in two areas. And even as a god, as a netter, he represents part of the whole Egyptian, not only mythology, but cosmology as well, because he's connected in with the sun. So, as I said, I sort of intertwine these two characteristics together when I work at him, but I thought because, as I said, we tend to forget about the animal kingdom when we look at totem animals and spirit animals. I just want to sort of expand on that just a little bit more. And also because he is a dung beetle, and people might be going, oh, yuck. You know, he pushes balls of dung or animal feces around. How can he be, you know, like a spirit animal? But that in itself is, or sort of takes his importance to a different level. And I said the level of the insects and how important they are basically for us, our environment. The dung beetle itself sort of breaks down the feces, and from there they bring out or are able to access all the nutrients which are essential for plant life, you know, the phosphorus and the potassium and the nitrogen. They burrow in the ground, so they sort of like help aerate the soil as well. And they also can help in controlling pesticides, so the farmers don't really need to use chemicals. So for the environment, they're actually very, very important. But what's really interesting is with the scarab beetles in particular, they've got these sort of horns or also an antenna on the top of their head. And it's the female who lays her eggs in the ball, and it's the male who actually pushes the ball around. So we've got this sort of balance between the divine masculine and divine feminine within the animal kingdom. And it is said that when the young beetles sort of hatch from the eggs, the dung actually provides them with the food and the nutrient and nourishment basically until they pop out because they're old enough. And this gives the illusion that they are sort of coming to life out of nothing, being born out of nothing, being born out of darkness. And that ties in with what Khepri is connected with in the ancient Egyptian pantheon, because his name actually means come into existence or to emerge. So he's like these young dung beetles emerging out of the ball of dung into all life. And this also connects him in with the start of the new cycles, whether it's the daily cycle, because he's connected with that very first rays of the new sun as it begins to emerge at dawn. He's also connected in some mythologies as actually pushing the sun through the underworld. And we're probably more familiar with the sun being known as Ra or Re or Atum or Amun, but there's different aspects of the sun, and he is that very first dawning of the sun again as the sun comes into essence, comes into being. And then the ancient Egyptians believed in their cosmology, bigger cycles, everything was in cycles within cycles. And they had this term called Zep-Tepi, which was the beginning of the new cycle, whether they could interpret it as being the beginning of, say, a new year, but they were also connected in with sort of the astronomical passing of the sun, how it moves through the different sort of nations of the zodiac. And that's what they were talking, these big cosmic cycles, really. And what we're seeing in our world today has been interpreted by some people as the ending of one cycle, where there's a lot of destruction and chaos happening in order for the new cycle to emerge. So Zep-Tepi has been interpreted very much like the Hindu Kali Yugas or the Yugas, which again are big cosmic cycles. So Khepri can be connected in with those new big cycles, but I tend to bring them right down to a more sort of easily understandable method for my little brain, which is the daily cycles. So he's the new sun, he's the submerging. And I think I know I'm sort of watching on a little bit because there's just so much, especially with the symbology when it comes to ancient Egyptian sort of netters and how they saw things as well. We could even bring that down to not only the daily cycle, but also say as the new moon, as well as the moon begins to first appear again, to first emerge. So as I said, the ancient Egyptians had at least four gods, all specifically connected in with different phases or aspects of the sun. Ra, it's probably the default one. He came around about the 5th dynasty, so he was being identified as the supreme god, and he's usually depicted with a falcon because the Egyptians like their animals with, or their gods with animal heads as well. There's also Atum, who sort of was connected with the Heliopolitan group of gods. So there were different sort of like nodes or areas of Egypt all had their different sort of like pantheon of gods until they all became one king, one country basically, when the two upper and lower kingdoms sort of merged. Amun was also seen as that invisible face of the sun, and he was sort of connected in with Thebes. And then, as I mentioned, Khepri was the new god or the new sun as well. So it sort of ties in with what the scarab beetle is in our day-to-day existence, as pushing the ball of dung around, and how the young beetles emerge out of the ball of dung as if out of nowhere. And then also with Khepri being associated with the sun, and that's emerging into a new day after pushing the sun through the night as well. So there's lots of symbolism that can be taken to on a different level. And that's my sort of take on the ancient Egyptian sort of cosmology, is that I love all the symbolism. And having said that, now I don't know if that's answered your question or I've gone completely down somewhere else.
No, that was all completely fascinating. And I think you gave a really good explanation about his contacts and who he is and in all his aspects. And two things that I was thinking when you were sharing that was, firstly, I would really love to have him in my garden to help with the fertilization. I was like, can I employ him? I need some dung beetles in my garden. And also, like, it's something that I love so much about the Egyptian deities. Like you were sharing, that they're all kind of represented, often in animal form, and there's kind of not this separation that you get where the animals are lesser than or different than. They're actually divine. They are sacred. They are the gods and goddesses. So they're not like, something that we just use, or a lower animal. They are actually, the most sacred, kind of presence on this planet. And I really do love that. So yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, and I also think, I said with Khepri himself, because he represents, I said, the animal kingdom bugs, and we don't like bugs. We are, they scare us or they annoy us. But then he reminds us just again how important they are, and we sort of know that with the plight of the bee, how we need them to pollinate our food. So it sort of brings the divine aspect down to our very basic existence. And he also reminds us, I feel, that maybe we should think twice before we reach for that bug spray and try and get them out of our gardens or our houses, that they also have a very important role, and it's reminding us of cohabitation with all these other species as well.
I mean, like, our food wouldn't even exist, without the insects. Like, this planet could not function. They are that important. So I'm so glad you're giving them some limelight and waving a flag for them. So if someone, was to start seeing scarab beetles, or maybe Khepri came to them in a dream, or the dung beetle symbolism they were seeing, what do you think it would mean? If they were your spirit animal, does it have a kind of a specific, like, do they embody a specific characteristic? Or maybe, kind of, if people were thinking, oh, I had this come up at this point in my life, what would it mean?
Question. I don't know if he actually does sort of I'm familiar with, say, people having snakes and wolves and all the sort of standard typical animals in their dreams, but for my personal sort of association with him, because we do have, so we've got dung beetles or scarab beetles all around the world. So he's just one of sort of the huge species of such beetles. I think firstly there's that connection with environment and sort of like right action, and if we're taking it to a spiritual path, it's like earthing. I call it earthing our spirituality, sort of like bringing it into the here and now. Instead of, I don't know, meditating for a better world, it's just like bringing that divine knowledge or insight into our everyday lives to see how we can improve not only our own selves, but that ripple effect. We're not a vacuum that goes out and touches everyone else. But on a more personal level, as I said, he's connected in with that new day sun, the beginning rays of the sun. So to me, and other people could have their own different interpretations, he's the embodiment of potentiality, of it's almost like if you're working with the moon, he is that phase between the dark moon and the first sliver that appears. Again, that sort of like all that potential that we could actually bring into the world, that we could actually shine the light on. So he's that ray of hope when, even if we're in our darkest moments, because again, he's connected with pushing the sun Ra through the underworld. And the Egyptian underworld, the Dayat, is different to how we might consider the underworld. It's sort of like another dimension almost as well. But this is where he can gather up all the potentialities, or if we're planning something, we're gathering all that knowledge to bring it into fruition or into manifestation, but also to, because the dung beetles themselves, their eggs sit in the ball for a period of time. He's also that incubation period. But before, if we've got big decisions, we were talking about the sun and its cycles, that reminder to sit with stuff and mull over and work through all the behind the scenes sort of things before we sort of present our thoughts, our plans, our new direction to the world. So again, all that potentiality that before that actual rebirth. And then he guides us through that rebirth into the world. And that's what I see. If you've seen dung beetles, don't be afraid of beetles, even if we don't like bugs and things like that. But even just, I'm just thinking now of the beetle itself. They've got quite a hard shell as well. So that's the protection of what is being birthed or being sort of like brought into form within itself as well. That's how I would see Khepri if he appears.
Sounds like kind of really kind of grounded and earthy and hardworking. Like I'm seeing like a farmer, that's kind of just working and tilling his field and putting in all of that effort that then brings forth life, and yeah, that sounds really
Yeah.
wonderful. And
And I
it's
think if for people who might be interested in astrology, to me, he sort of reminds, well, it's a little bit like he's sat and he's like doing the work. But it's all it's not the work that everybody can see. It's all that behind the scenes, that hard work that you do yourself to get yourself ready.
yeah. And often we can be resistant to that, can't we? That we want things quick and we want it now. And I think we have like in society now, it's like, like deliveries and stuff. It's like I have to wait 3 days for a delivery, or I want, the profit or the money or the business and the relationship. I want it right now. And it sounds like he's kind of got this energy where it's like, well, have you put the work in? Have you aligned to it? It's like, expecting to like have one day about chocolate and lose 2 stone. And he's like, no, you got to stick at it, dedication and devotion. And, imagine rolling that ball of dung takes a while, doesn't it? I imagine, that he's building it and building it and building it.
Yeah, and it's also, I think, to the reminder that because, when the animals do push the dung around, how they sort of aerate the soil and they break down the nutrients, there is this sort of reminder too that nothing's permanent, but everything's part of cycles. That when we feel ourselves going through, so even a psychological level, feeling ourselves going through those darker times, again, he is the sun, he emerges out, so he's connected in with rebirth. So it's just like, as long as you sort of like just breathe and find that sense of sort of balance within you, no matter how difficult things are going around outside you, through whatever sort of toolkit you may have, whether it's just breath work or meditation or prayers or ritual or whatever. As long as you sort of find that place of balance, then everything cycles upon cycles, and you will come out of it. And again, in astrology, he's a little bit like Chiron. It's like learning from the wounds that we've gone through, the past traumas in our lives. We all are scarred and tainted. No one sort of gets out of here alive, so to speak. But it's like not looking back with regret or connected in with that past experience, but looking at, what have we learned? How does that build us up as well? And then move forward with our lives. And so it gives you that sort of hope of rebirth and renewal aspect as well.
Wonderful. Oh, you're really exciting me about like researching him more and looking into him, because he sounds absolutely fascinating. Does he have any kind of relationships with like other deities specifically in the Egyptian pantheon? Like, does he work with any others? So like if someone has a deity already in the Egyptian pantheon, would he work okay with them, or is he a very kind of like soul worker?
It's really interesting because really when it comes to the excavations of Egypt itself, they've only like really skimmed the surface, because they've got a civilization that goes back, some people say like 5,000 years. It's just like really it goes back, I believe, a lot longer. We don't know. But he is connected, so he's an aspect of the sun, so he's connected in with Ra or Atum or Amun. In particular, so if anybody's sort of working with the sun deities, or even Sekhmet, so the female netter, the lion head, so he's connected in with the sun. What's really interesting is that though they haven't yet found like a temple dedicated to him, he appears like in what we call the Book of the Dead, the Egyptian Book of the Dead, as connected in with Ra, and also taking the deceased through the underworld, because he is that sort of connected with the bark, the boat. He is connected, or you find him in Dundera Temple, which is connected with Hathor, and in particular with the zodiacs that are on the ceiling, both, well, in particular the rectangle zodiac at the first hypostyle hall. If you get a chance to go to Dundera, you actually see images of him being birthed, so to speak, by Nut, the sky goddess. And he's connected in there, where she's also giving birth to Hathor. There you actually see the scarab beetle on different panels in different positions, which is really interesting. And before you even walk into the hypostyle hall at Dundera, you walk through the remnants of the gate of the wall that surrounded the temple. And if you look up, you see the underbelly of Khepri, and that's the only place that we are aware of in all of Egypt at this stage of seeing his underbelly. This one just has like the hieroglyphs underneath it, but you actually see the underbelly of the beetle, which is sort of highlights just how unique Dendera is. And when I was there, I was told that it sort of gives an indication that Dundera sort of opens up to the mysteries, the ancient Egyptian mysteries, sort of like an initiation rite itself. Then also at Abydos, which is dedicated to Osiris and the resurrection of Osiris, there's this building behind Abydos temple called the Assyrian, and they don't know anything about or much about the Assyrian. You go down to it, so it's like it could have been a subterranean chamber or building, or it could have been just the fact that over the millennia all the sands have built up. But next to this building, there's a tunnel, and in the tunnel there are images. And one of the later images, if we sort of like go along looking at the style of the artwork, is this picture of and this is where we get the concept of Zep Tepi, the primordial god Noon, rising up from the primordial waters, and he's holding a boat with all the gods on them, all the main gods, main pantheon, And in the middle, flagged ever side by Nephthys and Isis, is Khepri. And Khepri is holding up the sun. And then there's more imagery above that with Osiris and snakes and things like that. So it goes to a whole different range. So again, he is sort of connected in with the rebirth of cosmology, of the new dawn of time, or the new civilization, or the new era. And he works with all the gods as opposed to just one god. So you could actually call him in, and I'm just getting a thought now, a little bit like Ganesha in the Hindu pantheon. He sort of works with everybody. There are gods that he probably works more with or is aligned more with. But if you already are drawn to the Egyptian pantheon, he can slip in anywhere because he's one of these almost connected with the primordial emergence of existence. I
Yeah.
hope that answers your question.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I love to know how they all work together because, the divine and nature always works together. They're always in collaboration, and we can kind of set ourselves, in isolation, and that's not the way we're not meant to be. The divine nature shows us how we're all working together. So on that note, I'd love to know, how and what he's been for you. What's your experience with him? So did he show up at a particular time or moment? Did you seek him out, or did he come and wake you up?
Very good question. Very interesting question. Some when I have my relationship with gods, with deity, yes, often they sort of come to me like, "Hello, we're here, uninvited." But when it comes into my sort of conscious awareness, I find I start sort of like thinking of him. I'm drawn to his myth, um, often for no apparent reason at the time. He just sort of comes into my consciousness. I've always had this thing for Egyptian deity that you might sort of see behind me. Um, but he isn't a main sort of deity that's in everybody's face or everybody's sort of awareness as well, which is unusual for me because I tend to go for those sort of um, the non-popular ones. Like one of my main goddesses that I work for is Nephthys, but there's an element to her that I connect into, and it's that silence. I sort of am drawn to the underworldly, or the people call them dark. I've written a book about dark goddesses, but that sort of almost those deities that make us think, make us sort of sit in that place of pregnant pause. And he came through in a time where I was going through a major illness, and it was almost like a sign of, yes, you will get through this, and you'll emerge out the other side as well. So as soon as, or not as soon as, but when I sort of emerged out of that, I ended up getting, we call them tramp stamps over here. It's a tattoo at the base of your spine, and I've got like a winged beetle there, and it's one of my favorite tattoos, but where it is, I don't usually get to see it a lot. Um, and that was to me a constant reminder that I'm part of this big cycle as well. He, I don't do specific rites to him because I work with other deities as main deities, but he, again, like the animal kingdom, he's always there. He's always sort of a reminder of, especially looking at more everyday things. Each time the sun rises, he's there. It's sort of like um, I met a voodoo high priestess, Mambo, a number of years ago, and she took us through a very simple, so it's an ancestor rite of acknowledgement rite. And first thing is you get up in the morning, have a glass of water, and you salute it, the ancestors, and salute it to the new day sun. And I still do that many years later, but my new day sun, of course, is Khepri as he's beginning to emerge. Whether I can actually see sun emerging, or it's just, in my imagination or my visualizations as well. So that's what I sort of do on so it's a subconscious daily level. But then he's also, when you preparing your ritual space, that lighting of the first candle, that bringing that spark awakening the darkness with the light. He's connected in with that as well. And some of these gods or deity don't need big sort of like chest beating, fanfaring, hurrah, we're doing a ritual for so and so. They just like the, because you know, being the insect behind the scenes, it's all those stuff that we do subconsciously that we don't consciously aware that we are still connecting in with him as well. And that's how I sort of bring it through into my everyday life practice, whatever people want to refer it as.
Fabulous. And do you have any like tips or tools for someone if they really resonate with all of this and they want to either call on Khepri or whether they want to work with beetles in general, dung beetles, scarab beetles, any kind of beetle? If you've got any kind of like tips that you say for them, or like maybe some kind of beginner activities they could try?
Such one of the good beginner activities, regardless of whether you've got scarab beetles or dung beetles in your area, is just probably be a little bit more aware of the animal life around you. Think twice before you reach for that bug spray to get rid of that spider. Can you like move it outside? I mean, I live in Australia. Some of our spiders are quite dangerous. So I'm not saying I do it all the time. There are, some of the redbacks. I know they can be quite nasty if they bite you. And there's also the white tips. But I try to rehouse them and have the sort of like rule that they can have the outside, I'll have the inside. Doesn't always work when it comes to animals. But things like even ants, just be a little bit more mindful of the importance. With the dung beetle itself, again, it's the symbolism behind him, the new day sun. So if you can get up just before dawn, see if you can honor or even just a pause for a moment. And I think this is the important thing with Khepri, because the dung beetles emerge out of the ball of dung and he's connected with that emerging sun. It's just like that sort of, as I said, that pregnant pause before we rush out into the world. It's just like take moments or conscious moments, even throughout the day, but preferably if you don't meet dawn, but the first time when you get up, and to be still for a moment, even like before you get out of bed, just give yourself a minute or even 30 seconds to just be still. And if that's not possible for you at that time, as soon as you can, as close as you can in the morning, bring even a few moments to just be still. Don't rush around. In our modern world, we are constantly in a rush. So even before you have that first cup of coffee, just be still and listen, be observant. And I think this is what he, well, at least for me, this is what he sort of brings back, this awareness. And in giving ourselves that space, we become more observant what's around us. And then we can sort of tap into our connection with the greater whole. And I think this is another thing, the dung beetle, pushing that ball of dung, the dung is round, it sort of brings us back to we're not separate from our environment or even from other people. We are all connected. We all play a role as well. Especially, I like to think that we're all energetic beings. So our energy also plays out in the world. So if we wake up angry, we can give a few moments to find that place of peace and center and stillness again and try and bring that forth to the world. Or like if you wake up sad or even joyful, it means that we've sort of taken on other people's energy as well. So again, he's reminding us to come back to center, balance, especially in a crazy world, and then we can roll out our own dung beetle, ball of dung, so to speak, into the world, and that will help our environment. So we'll be a little bit more mindful as to how we walk in the world. And that's how I work with deities. It's not just an internal thing, but it's also our contribution to everything else around us.
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you so much for that. Such a powerful and beautiful message. Thank you. Is there anything else that you want to share about him that's just bursting to come forward, or anything you had in your preparation? Like, I need to share this that I haven't asked you.
The people who are into, I'm a sort of person, I like when I'm wanting to establish a relationship with a deity, to light a candle, do a little bit of a ritual, even find a prayer or a chant or something to him. His pictures are all over the internet, being the scarab beetle, and there are different aspects of him as well. If you go to Egypt, you can pick up the little scarabs relatively cheap. This is made out of alabaster. So you can sort of create a visual imagery of him as well. And there are prayers that often through the Book of the Dead, or you can just write one yourself, because he is the winged beetle. He is the rising sun. So even if you just say a prayer to the sun at dawn, you are connecting in with him. He doesn't, as far as I'm aware, doesn't have specific colors or crystals or correspondences like that, because he said he's not one of the main deities. He doesn't have a cult following or a temple. But for gods like that, I just use a plain white candle, or you might want to use like a very pale colored candle that represents the rising sun to you, like a very pale lemon yellow candle. But often I would just sit and just say, I want to connect with you, Khepri, especially around the times of, say, between the dark moon, we're beginning to sort of manifest something new. And I think anytime that you are bringing in anything new, you are actually connecting with him as well. And yeah, everyone has their own sort of practice, but that's how I sort of, once he came into my conscious awareness, connected in a little bit more with him. Read up, was that he doesn't really have myths, but there are some stories. You need to do a little bit of a search as to his role and the rebirth aspect that he has. And I think, again, considering the world that we live in and the times that we're living in, he's a good reminder that you will be reborn, like things will get better. You just need to sort of hang in there. And every day is a new day, basically, because of Khepri pushing the sun around.
Yeah, we all need a bit of hope, I think, right now. And yeah, a reminder that the sun always sets and rises, and it helps us to keep going through the dark times anytime it feels difficult. So thank you to Khepri, and thank you to you as well, and thank you for sharing all about him. So if anybody wants to know more about Frances, then I'm going to post, I said, all her links below about her books. If you have any questions for her as well, please do put them in the comments down below, and we'll get them answered for you. If there's anything that you want to know more about, or there was something that really kind of struck you and you had a moment of sunlight, then please do just let us know in the comments. So thank you so much, Frances, for, like I said, sharing all of your wisdom around this, and also, like I said, shining the light on beetles. I'm so glad that they're getting some love. So thank you. And I look forward to seeing you all in the next episode. And I hope that you have now some place for beetles going forward in your spiritual journey and connection.
Thank you, Rachel.
Take care, everybody.